The wind carried a sound that didn't belong in Pine Hollow. It was so faint it could have been nothing at all, but Hunter caught it. The 5-year-old sable German shepherd froze in mid-stride, ears sharp against the gray February air. Deputy Grayson Cole felt the leash tighten in his hand. He recognized that stance instantly. Nose low, tail rigid, eyes locked as if the dog had just uncovered something important. And Grayson knew from experience, when Hunter signaled, you paid attention. The homes along Lincoln Court looked like they'd been abandoned for years. Paint peeled in ragged strips, porches sagged beneath damp leaves, and rusted mailboxes leaned in surrender. Past the cul-de-sac, bare maples rattled in the wind, adding to the heavy smell of earth and emptiness. Grayson stepped from his patrol SUV, boots crunching on gravel as the promise of Oregon rain pressed down on him. Hunter pulled toward the second-to-last house, the one half-collapsed with a roof that had caved in over what must once have been a child's room. Even from the yard, Grayson spotted a scrap of faded pink wallpaper still clinging stubbornly to the exposed beams. "Easy, boy," he murmured, easing his grip. This wasn't aggression. Hunter was in search mode, all focus and purpose. Whatever had drawn him here wasn't just a stray animal. They moved past a section of rotted fencing, the yard littered with broken garden beds and rusting tomato cages. Then Hunter froze. His body went rigid, a low growl rising from his chest. Grayson listened and heard it too. A voice, faint and weak, just 2 words. "Help me." His pulse quickened, training taking over. "Hunter, stay," he ordered, crouching low. At his feet lay a rusted grate, half buried beneath soggy leaves. Stale, damp air seeped through, tinged with mildew. Grayson leaned closer. "This is Deputy Cole. Can you hear me?" There was a pause, then the sound of someone stifling a breath. Hunter barked once, sharp and urgent, as if to cut through doubt. The grate was chained shut, corrosion eating through the metal. Grayson sprinted back to his SUV, grabbed a crowbar, and returned. With one forceful pull, the chain snapped and the grate clattered aside. The opening was barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. He aimed his flashlight into the dark space. At first, nothing but rotted beams of what had been a root cellar. Then, in the far corner, 2 small figures stirred. Children. The older girl held the younger protectively, her arms wrapped tight as though sheer will could keep her safe. Their clothes were threadbare, one in a hoodie 2 sizes too small, the other in a wool dress with sneakers missing their laces. Dust clung to their tangled hair. "I'm here to help," Grayson said softly, his voice steady. "You're safe now. What are your names?" The older girl's whisper barely carried. "La and June." "La and June," he repeated, glancing upward. Hunter's head hovered over the opening, ears pricked. "That's Hunter up there. He's the one who found you." At the sound of the dog's name, June stirred, her gaze drawn toward the beam of light where Hunter's silhouette waited. Grayson extended his hand carefully. "Can you stand?" Ella nodded weakly, helping June to her feet. Step by step, he guided them upward. At the surface, Hunter stood waiting, tail low but steady. When Ella reached the grass, Hunter gave a soft whine and pressed his nose to her hand. June buried her face against his neck, clinging to him like he was the only safe thing in the world. The rain began to fall, heavy drops pattering from the slate-colored sky. Within minutes, sirens pierced the stillness. 2 ambulances and another patrol car arrived. EMTs wrapped the girls in blankets, checked their vitals, and spoke gently. "Dehydrated, but stable," one said, flashing Grayson a look. "They're lucky. Real lucky." The girls clung to Hunter until the last possible moment, their small hands tangled in his fur as if afraid to let go. Grayson watched silently as the ambulance door shut and the vehicle disappeared down the road. Hunter remained at his side, eyes fixed on the route as though committing it to memory. For the first time in months, something unexpected stirred beneath Grayson's usual armor of cynicism and regret. Hope. By the time they headed back toward the station, night was pressing in. Streetlights glowed against the wet pavement, halos in the drizzle. Grayson glanced at Hunter in the passenger seat. The shepherd was still alert, ears flicking at every sound. But there was something deeper in his stance, a quiet vigilance that seemed to say, "This isn't over yet." Back at the precinct, Grayson filed his initial report, though the details felt frustratingly thin. No last names, no address, no sign of parents. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. "Cole, you've got a visitor. Says she knows your dog." In the lobby stood Samantha Reyes, the town veterinarian, her dark braid damp from the rain and her navy jacket clinging to her shoulders. She greeted Grayson with a brief smile before kneeling to Hunter's side. "Anything broken?" "He's fine," Grayson answered. "The girls?" "Not so much." Hunter stepped forward, pressing his weight gently against her leg. No playful wag, no exuberant greeting, just a quiet signal. Samantha frowned. "He's stressed. Heart rate's high. Whatever he uncovered out there, it's staying with him." Grayson didn't respond immediately. He'd worked alongside Hunter through countless searches, from fugitives to missing hikers. But this felt different. The dog wasn't merely recalling the search. He was remembering them. That thought gnawed at Grayson, leaving him with a single persistent question. Who had abandoned those girls? And why did it feel like this was only the beginning? By the time the ambulance doors opened at Pine Hollow Medical Center, the drizzle had turned into a steady, whispering rain. The lobby smelled of coffee, lemon cleaner, and a faint metallic tang. A scent that spoke of more pain than anyone cared to admit. The nurses moved with the practiced efficiency of professionals, fast yet gentle, their voices soft as they spoke to Laya and June, assuring them, "You're safe, sweethearts," even if the words only referred to blankets, water, and a small stuffed bear salvaged from lost and found. Deputy Grayson Cole stayed back, the weight of his badge suddenly feeling heavier than its physical weight. Hunter remained close enough to touch, a constant presence, his eyes never ceasing to scan. Small puffs of his breath fogged the cool air as he kept watch over the girls, his gaze silent but possessive. A pediatric nurse with auburn hair and a silver nose ring approached. Her badge read Jenna. She led them to an exam room, promising gently, half to the girls, half to Grayson and Hunter, that she would be careful. "We'll check vitals, give fluids, maybe some warm broth. Nothing scary." Laya lifted her chin, determined to be brave. June held on to Hunter's rough fur until she had to release it. As she did, Hunter followed the gurney with a soft, low sound. Grayson placed a hand on the dog's shoulder. "I know," he murmured. "I know." They waited in a side corridor painted the color of July wheat. Rain tapped against the high windows, and a TV in the corner showed a news segment about a high school robotics team heading to state. No one watching. Samantha Reyes arrived, scrubs beneath a damp navy rain jacket, her hair braided over one shoulder. Without asking, she slid beside Grayson, first examining Hunter with gentle hands along his spine. "Pulses up," she noted, brow furrowed. "He's hypervigilant, and he's not leaving them." "He didn't, not once," Grayson said, even as the EMTs moved them. Samantha glanced through the exam room window. Hunter exhaled slowly, and the team asked questions in measured tones. When Jenna returned with a clipboard, she reported, "They're dehydrated." IVs started. No major injuries, just some bruises and scratches. CT only if needed. Right now, it's warm blankets and slow sips. The girls tried not to speak. Jenna looked at Hunter. "Can he stay for a bit if we keep things controlled?" Grayson nodded, and Hunter obeyed like a shadow following divine orders. The room, small and wheat-colored, still held a paper turkey from last November. Laya sat upright on the bed, hands clenched in blankets, jaw tight. June leaned into her sister, eyes flicking toward Hunter as though drawn by magnets. When the dog reached the bed, June's shoulders eased, fingers finding his fur. "You did well," Jenna murmured. "We'll keep you warm." Samantha remained nearby, ready to steady Hunter, but he stayed at the foot of the bed, ears alert, studying the girl's every breath. Grayson stepped forward slowly. "My name's Grayson. I work with Hunter. You told me your first names earlier, Laya and June. That was brave." Laya nodded mechanically. June's voice came as a whisper. "Can he stay?" Grayson assured her he could. They remained like that for a while, the IVs dripping, the rain falling steadily, the clock ticking slower with each second. Hunter's ears twitched at every noise, then settled. Twice June's eyes closed. Twice she startled herself awake. Jenna returned with steaming cups of broth, presenting them carefully. "We'll go slow." She even placed one for Grayson. "Sometimes the helper needs care too," she said softly. "Any last names?" she asked after the girls sipped. Laya glanced around quiet. "No," Jenna said gently. "No answers today." Grayson understood. These kids had been taught names could be dangerous. He didn't push. Some lessons the world enforces harshly, and you don't challenge them lightly. Stepping outside for the nurses to check vitals, Grayson found Chief Ray Carmichael with a styrofoam cup of black coffee, posture weary from budgets and disappointments. "Heard you found two?" Carmichael asked quietly. "Hunter did," Grayson said. "Storm cellar under an abandoned property on Lincoln Court. County records are slow. I'll go to the office if I have to. I need to know who owned it when the cellar was sealed." Carmichael looked toward the exam room. "We'll call Salem for CPS. You want point?" "I want continuity," Grayson said. "These kids aren't just files." Carmichael grunted agreement, adding the usual small-town caution, "Keep a lid on it for now. No headlines before answers." Back inside, Jenna taped a fresh line as June whispered, "Will he stay here?" "Who, sweetheart?" Hunter lifted his head, gaze steady and commanding. June swallowed hard, shaking her head. Jenna smiled quietly. "It's okay," she said, not recording a word. Samantha shared a look with Grayson over the bed. "We're close," her expression said, "but not today." Soon after, a hospital social worker arrived, voice soft, ready with gentle questions and permission forms. She was good. The girls kept their answers minimal, careful to reveal nothing. No last names, no school, no birthdays. When asked who they lived with, Laya's mouth drew a straight, hard line. "We don't," she said. After an hour, the room seemed to gain a new weight, a gentle warmth that suggested they had crossed through the worst of it, even if that wasn't entirely true. Hunter stretched, then settled back down, chin resting like a quiet anchor, and June mimicked him, learning from his calm. Grayson slipped out and found a quiet alcove near a vending machine. He called dispatch, asking for every call from Lincoln Court and surrounding blocks for the last 3 years. 911 calls, wellness. Checks, reports of suspicious activity, lien notices, foreclosures, anything indicating a property in limbo. The dispatcher joked about Christmas shopping, then fell silent when he realized Grayson's tone wasn't playful. After hanging up, he called county records, where a patient clerk promised to pull the chain of title on 223 Lincoln Court and scan the older deeds, warning it might take until after lunch. Grayson insisted he could come to her, but she urged him to take a break, insisting he sounded like someone who needed 30 minutes of nothing. He almost laughed. Back in the room, Jenna negotiated with two determined 10-year-olds over crackers as a side to their broth, giving Hunter one as June demanded. Samantha suggested the girls keep something of Hunter's to hold. Grayson unclipped the dog's tag and placed it in June's hand. She curled her fingers around it, exhaling as though it were a lifeline. The social worker recommended rest, the IV drips slowed, and the room's hum dropped a few decibels. Hunter stayed alert, eyes open, guarding. Grayson stepped into the hall and nearly bumped into a woman in a tan trench coat, rain freckling her shoulders, binder clutched to her chest. Her curls had been tamed into a bun, but not completely, and her ID read Elena Hart, Child and Family Services. "Your Deputy Cole," she said, offering a hand. She had been on the road to Pine Hollow for something else when the call came. "Lucky you," he said. "We got two who don't want to be found." "Most kids who shouldn't have to be brave end up learning how," Elena replied, in a tone that suggested she had said it too many times before. "Can I see them?" Grayson allowed her in. She stood at the foot of the bed, letting silence settle before speaking. "Hi, I'm Elena. My job is to make sure nobody hurts you and to listen if you want to talk. Listening works even if you don't use words." Laya narrowed her eyes, measuring, while June twisted the tag in her hand. Elena crouched, patient, then pulled a laminated card from her coat pocket, sliding it onto the tray. It showed simple drawings: eyes for see, ears for hear, a hand for touch, and a house for home, each with a yes/no bubble. The girls could mark them if they wanted. Laya glanced at Grayson and Hunter before taking the pen. She circled a few things, paused at the house symbol, and left it unmarked. Elena nodded, accepting it as a thoughtful choice. After a few minutes, Elena stepped back into the corridor with Grayson and Samantha. "I've seen these girls before," she said quietly. Not them specifically, but this kind of quiet. When kids hold the map and won't show it, it usually means someone taught the maps get you hurt. "A guardian?" Grayson asked. "Whoever claims to be in charge doesn't deserve the title," she replied, lifting her binder. "I'll dig. There was a Portland case a couple of years back with gaps big enough to swallow a family. If this connects, I'll find it." "Not on paper, you won't," Grayson said. "If someone wanted to hide them, they cleaned the paper trail." "Then I'll look for what's missing," Elena said, her tone steel. Before he could respond, his radio crackled. Dispatch reported Lincoln Court had logged 0 calls in the last 36 months, odd for that block, and the property had transferred twice, bank to private buyer to an LLC registered out of town with no contact information. Grayson's jaw tightened, shell company hiding in plain sight. "Send me the LLC paperwork. I'll take a drive after records," he said, pocketing his phone and feeling the next move harden in his chest. Ask too much, and you spook the wrong person. Ask too little, and you miss the door while standing in the hall. Through the exam room window, he saw June finally let her eyelids fall, while Laya held the dog tag in one hand and the blanket edge in the other. Hunter didn't sleep. He'd learned to rest with one eye open. He simply watched. Ever notice how some dogs seem to pick their spot? Samantha asked softly, like they choose it themselves. This is where I stand every day, Grayson said. What's yours? She asked. Depends on the day, he replied. Today, it's those two. Elena tucked a damp curl behind her ear and closed her binder. I'll pull the Salem files and call Clearwater up north. If their mom exists in the system, I'll find her. Grayson nodded. I'll find whoever thinks they can claim these kids. He didn't say he by accident. Maybe it was bias, maybe instinct, maybe the missing piece of the puzzle. He stepped back to tell the girls he'd be down the hall a while, and that, if the nurses agreed, Hunter would stay. June's eyes opened just enough to locate him, then closed again as if understanding had been as effortless as breathing. Hunter's on duty, he said, mostly to Laya, giving her a sense of a plan. No one gets past him. That's the rule now. Laya nodded once, a small, fragile start to a silent agreement. Outside, the rain softened in Pine Hollow. A good sign, though not an end to the storm. Just a window to prepare for what comes next. Grayson checked his watch, touched the radio mic on his shoulder, and headed to records. He had a list in mind, and a line he was willing to cross if the paperwork didn't give him answers. In the hospital, in a pale, recycled air room, a dog lay beside a bed, holding back the darkness. The next morning, Pine Hollow woke under a tin-colored sky. Heavy clouds pressed down on the pines, quieting even the birds. Deputy Grayson Cole sat at his kitchen table, his coffee gone cold. Hunter sprawled on the floor by his boots, paws twitching in a half-dream. Grayson's laptop sat open to the county records portal, its progress wheel spinning endlessly. Property files for 223 Lincoln Court were still loading. He stared at that word for 20 minutes. Running a hand over Hunter's head, he muttered, "We're not getting this from a server. We'll have to dig." Hunter thumped his tail slowly in response. By 9, he arrived at the county records office, a low brick building smelling faintly of toner and dust. Marlene, the clerk from yesterday, waved him in. She wore her readers on a chain and had a knack for spotting what others missed. "I pulled what you asked for," she said, sliding a manila folder across the counter. Highlighted the odd bits. Grayson flipped it open. First transfer, bank foreclosure to a private buyer. Second transfer, 3 months later, to an LLC called Northwind Holdings. Mailing address, a UPS store in Rockford, 3 towns away. No phone, no office. "Northwind's a ghost," Marlene said. "Exists on paper, but good luck finding the person behind it." "Somebody's name is on the articles," Grayson said. "Not necessarily," she replied. "Could be a registered agent. They're paid to hide the real owner." Grayson closed the folder. "Then I'll start at the UPS store." The Rockford UPS store sat in a strip mall between a vape shop and a nail salon. A bell announced him to a teenager in a brown apron, scrolling her phone. "Looking for the box holder for Northwind Holdings," Grayson said, flashing his badge. "Need a contact name?" she asked, barely looking up. "Can't give out box info without a subpoena." Grayson leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Not even to keep 2 kids safe?" Her gaze sharpened. "Boxes checked monthly. Mid-40s guy, tall, ball cap. Pays cash 6 months at a time. That's it. Car? Big black Ford truck." It wasn't much, but more than the file had offered. Back in Pine Hollow, the hospital cleared the girls for a short transfer to a secure room at the sheriff's station, comfortable while Child and Family Services determined the next steps. Elena Hart agreed to ride along. At the medical center, Laya sat cross-legged on the bed, June curled beside her. Hunter stretched at their feet, eyes flicking to the door as Grayson entered, then back to the girls. "Ready for a little field trip?" he asked gently. Laya's shoulders tensed. June stroked Hunter's ear. "He's coming too," Grayson added, "just down the street." That earned a small nod from Laya. The sheriff's station interview room wasn't a typical interrogation space today. Carmichael had them use the old conference room. Sun-faded blinds, sagging couch, tables scattered with coloring books from the annual toy drive. Someone had set out 2 mugs of hot chocolate, marshmallows floating on top. Hunter circled the room slowly, sniffing corners, then settled by the couch. The girls gravitated toward him instantly. Elena sat across, opening a thin binder. She didn't start with the papers. "I've been thinking about you two," she began. "About what it takes to get through what you faced, and how sometimes the best way to begin is by talking about what you don't want to talk about." Laya's chin lifted slightly, listening but cautious. "I'm not asking about the house. Not yet," Elena continued. "I want to know what makes you feel safe." June's answer was immediate. "Him," she said, nodding at Hunter. The dog blinked slowly, as if he understood. Elena smiled. "Good choice. Anyone else?" Laya hesitated, glancing at Grayson, then the window. "There used to be," she said finally. "But she's gone," June added flatly. Elena asked gently, "Our mom?" The words were flat, practiced, but not true. They didn't believe their mother had abandoned them, and that mattered. After steering the conversation to safer topics, school, favorite foods, Elena closed the binder and stepped into the hall with Grayson. "They don't believe their mother left," she said quietly. "That matters. If I can get the right files from Salem, we might prove it." "Why do I have a feeling the name on those files will match the guy behind that LLC?" Grayson asked. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the correct one, and sometimes, as Elena pointed out, people become careless when they believe they've covered their tracks." This particular trail unexpectedly led to Samantha. That afternoon, she phoned Grayson from her clinic. "You'll want to see this," she said. The girls came in for a brief checkup, and when I placed their duffel bag on the counter, something slipped out. It was a small leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and pages warped from moisture. Inside were repeated sketches of 2 girls' faces, always side by side, always encircled with hearts, interspersed with notes about medication dosages, half-completed grocery lists, and near the back, a folded letter. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. "Laya and June, I am so sorry I'm not there. I never wanted to leave you. I never would. My illness isn't the kind you can see. It makes the world too loud, too dark. I'm trying to get better so I can come home. Don't believe anyone who says I gave you away. I am your mother. I love you always. Mom." Grayson read the letter twice, then a third time, feeling his pulse thumping in his temples. "This isn't abandonment," he murmured. "This is someone taking advantage of her being too sick to fight back." By evening, Pine Hollow carried the sharp electric tension of an approaching storm. Grayson sat at his desk, the journal open beside him, the manila folder from county records stacked on top. The name Northwind Holdings stared back at him from the deed. Now he had a letter linking the girls to a mother who had never let them go. Not in her heart, not on paper. He accessed the secure state database and ran a search for guardianship filings tied to the girls' birth certificates. There it was, a petition filed 3 years earlier by a man named Clint Maddox. That same month, Marina Hale, the girl's mother, had been placed under psychiatric care. Temporary custody had been granted, pending follow-up, which had never happened. The pattern was forming in Grayson's mind, ugly and familiar. Find someone vulnerable, take what they can't defend, hide the evidence behind shell companies and bureaucratic red tape. And now Maddox, or whoever he was working with, was the only barrier between these two girls and the mother they believed they'd lost. Grayson closed his laptop. The rest could wait until morning. Tonight, he made sure the girls and their four-legged guardian slept under a locked roof. He stood, Hunter rising alongside him, as alert as ever. "Let's go, partner. We've got a post to hold." Hunter's tail gave a single wag. Outside, the first drops of the storm tapped steadily against the pavement, precise like a countdown. The storm rolled through the night, turning Pine Hollow's streets into black mirrors under the streetlights. By dawn, the air was thick with the scent of wet pine and diesel from logging trucks rumbling down Highway 7. Deputy Grayson Cole had been at his desk since 6. The girl's journal lay open beside a steaming mug of coffee. Hunter rested at his feet, chin down, ears twitching at every sound from the hallway. The night had been quiet in the literal sense, no break-ins, no disturbances. But in Grayson's mind, events had been moving rapidly. Every detail from the last 48 hours lined up like pins ready to topple. The shell company holding the Lincoln Court property, the temporary guardianship petition filed by Maddox 3 years ago, Marina Hale's letter proving she never relinquished her daughters. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew what to look for, and Grayson had spent most of his career knowing exactly that. At 7:10, Elena Hart arrived, her trench coat dripping onto the station floor. She set a thermos on his desk without asking. Salem had brought it through, she said, flipping open a thin, rain-spotted file. "Maddox has a record?" Grayson asked. "No convictions," she replied, "but he has a history of trouble proximity." She tapped the page with her neatly painted nails. Civil suits over unpaid debts, a temporary restraining order in Spokane, a bankruptcy from 6 years ago, a man who moves just enough to stay untouchable. Grayson skimmed the sheet. Maddox had had no permanent address since 2018. Every listing was a P.O. box or a short-term rental. Elena leaned closer. One of those rentals, outside Rockford 6 months ago, had been paid in cash. The landlord said Maddox left in the middle of the night, no forwarding address, but he had left a few things behind, a battered duffel bag and a gas bill from a cabin property in Grayson Ridge. Grayson frowned. Old logging country. Half those roads aren't even on GPS, which is why I think you and Hunter should go check it out. The ridge lay 30 miles north, beyond 2 logging gates, along switchbacks that would unsettle any out-of-towner. By the time Grayson's SUV crested the last hill, the rain had dulled to a mist clinging to the windshield like frost. Hunter, in the passenger seat, stiffened suddenly. "Smelling something, partner?" Grayson asked. Hunter's tail swayed deliberately, and a low, winded growl slipped from his throat, the sound of a fresh trail. Grayson slowed as the gravel road narrowed, trees forming a tunnel overhead. The cabin emerged suddenly, weather-beaten, tucked among cedars, with a sagging porch and one shutter hanging by a single rusted hinge. No vehicle, no light, but wet tire tracks led up to the porch. "Recent," Grayson murmured, parking 50 yards back and cutting the engine. "Stay sharp," he whispered. They approached on foot, boots sinking into soft mud. Hunter's ears flicked, nose working overtime. When they reached the porch, the dog veered to the left, leading Grayson to the cabin's side. Half hidden under a blue tarp weighted with cinder blocks was a black Ford F-250. Grayson crouched to check the plates. Tags expired. Under the grime on the bumper, a faint dealership sticker from Spokane. Maddox, he muttered. He was about to return to the front when Hunter froze, ears snapping toward the tree line. A moment later, Grayson heard it too. Branches cracking, quick footsteps through underbrush. No command was needed. Hunter surged forward, a streak of sable and black against the wet green forest. Grayson followed, heart racing, ducking under low branches and leaping over slick, rain-soaked roots. Through the mist, a figure suddenly appeared. Tall and lean, wearing a camo jacket and a ball cap pulled low, the man glanced back, noticed the dog closing in, and veered sharply downhill. A mistake. Hunter lunged, teeth sinking just above the wrist. The man hit the mud with a yell that dissolved into a string of curses. By the time Grayson caught up, Hunter had shifted his weight just enough to hold the man without causing serious injury. "Clint Maddox," Grayson said, keeping his breath steady despite the chase. "You're under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, fraud, and endangering the welfare of a minor." Maddox spat mud. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," Grayson replied, snapping the cuffs around his wrists. "The rest you'll explain to a judge." Back at the SUV, Grayson secured Maddox in the back seat while Hunter hopped into the passenger side, eyes fixed on the suspect. On the drive back, Maddox muttered lowly about lies and misunderstandings, but his gaze kept flicking toward the journal Grayson had placed on the dash. That glance told Grayson everything he needed to know. Maddox fully understood what it meant for him. When they arrived in Pine Hollow, Elena was waiting in the sally port, binder in hand, eyebrows raised at the sight of the cuffs. "Found him snooping around his truck," Grayson reported. "Good work. I'll start the interview," Elena said. Before she could move, Maddox twisted in his seat. "I want a lawyer." "You'll have one," Elena replied coolly. "Meanwhile, I'll catalog evidence from your cabin." His jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. 2 deputies headed out to secure the cabin and collect anything relevant: papers, electronics, even personal items linking Maddox to the girl's time in the cellar. Grayson went straight to the conference room where Laya and June sat with Hunter. The moment the dog stepped in, June leapt from the couch and buried herself in his fur. Laya didn't move as quickly, but her eyes tracked Grayson like she was reading him, searching for truth. "You found him," she said, not asking a question. "I did," Grayson replied, "and he won't be coming near you again." June buried her face in Hunter's fur, and Laya's shoulders visibly relaxed. Elena joined them minutes later, expression careful. "Girls, over the next few days I'll have some questions, but for now, know that you're safe. Clint Maddox is in custody." Laya's jaw worked. "He said she left us." "Sometimes people lie to protect themselves," Elena explained. "The truth is, your mom never stopped loving you." June looked up. "Where is she?" Elena glanced at Grayson. This was the line they'd agreed to stick to until everything was ready. "She's somewhere safe," Elena said. "We're working to bring her back to you." That night, as the rain eased and streetlights cast long, shimmering shadows across Main Street, Grayson sat at his kitchen table. Hunter lay nearby, the sound of his breathing the only thing breaking the quiet. The journal sat open in front of him, next to the file on Northwind Holdings. Maddox's arrest was a major step, but it wasn't the end. Somewhere upstate, a woman named Marina Hale was waiting for someone to believe her, and now that someone had to be him. He reached down to scratch behind Hunter's ears. Tomorrow, we find her. Hunter's eyes opened, steady and certain. If dogs could speak, Grayson figured the answer would be the same one he'd given all along. I'm with you. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving Pine Hollow washed clean but unnaturally quiet. Streets gleamed under pale sunlight, puddles reflecting the bare maples lining Main Street. Deputy Grayson Cole stood at the edge of his desk, a fresh coffee in one hand, Marina Hale's journal in the other. The leather cover was worn from years of handling, and the ink had faded in places where moisture had seeped through. Each page felt like a voice reaching from somewhere he hadn't been yet. Hunter sat at his side, tail curled around his paws, alert as ever. Elena Hart stepped in without knocking, a folder tucked under her arm. I've got a lead, she said, dropping it onto the desk. Car Recovery Center, Northern Idaho. Marina Hale was admitted 3 years ago, diagnosed with severe PTSD and major depressive disorder. She's been stable for over a year. A discharge plan was in place, but she never left. Grayson opened the file. A photo was clipped to the first page, Marina in her mid-30s, pale green eyes that seemed older than her face, hair loosely pulled back. Her expression was guarded, but stubborn. Why hasn't she been released? He asked. Elena hesitated. Her caseworker said she's been waiting for word about her daughters. When she was told they were placed for adoption, she stopped pushing to leave. She didn't see a reason to start over if they were gone. Grayson's jaw tightened. Maddox hadn't just taken the girls. He made sure she believed she had lost them forever. An hour later, Grayson drove east on Highway 7. Hunter stretched across the passenger seat, head tilted toward the window. Elaine rode in the back, going through the rest of the file. Clearwater Recovery Center lay just over the state line. A 2-hour drive if the roads cooperated, which they didn't. Heavy snowmelt left patches slick, and they passed crews clearing minor rock slides. Despite that, Grayson felt his tension shift, not easing, but focusing. This wasn't just about locking Maddox away anymore. It was about reuniting a family before the damage became permanent. Clearwater Recovery Center didn't resemble any mental health facility Grayson had seen. Housed in a converted lakeside lodge with white siding, a green metal roof, and large windows overlooking pine-covered hills, it smelled faintly of wood smoke and cedar. A tall man with silvering hair and warm brown eyes met them at the front desk. His name tag read, Dr. Is Choudhury. You're here about Marina Hale, he said, his voice calm, carrying the authority of someone who had weathered many storms. She's having a good day. Grayson exchanged a glance with Elena. She knows we're coming. Cry shook his head. I thought it better to keep it a surprise. Anticipation carries its own weight sometimes. They walked down a carpeted hallway, faintly scented with rosemary and lemon polish. Beyond a set of glass doors, a small garden thrived despite the cold. Raised herb beds, a bench tucked under a trellis, and the gentle lap of lake water just beyond the fence created a quiet, inviting space. Marina sat alone on the bench, a cream cardigan draped over her shoulders, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her hair fell loosely, curling slightly at the ends. She gazed at the water, neither tense nor relaxed, simply waiting. When she noticed their footsteps, her eyes first landed on Elena, then on Grayson, and finally on Hunter. For a moment, the dog just looked at her, ears perked. Then he approached without a command. Marina's lips parted. I know you, she whispered. Hunter stopped just short of her knees, allowing her to reach out. Her fingers brushed his fur gently, as though afraid he might disappear if she touched too firmly. Marina, Elena began, we've spoken on the phone before. This is Deputy Grayson Cole and Hunter. Marina's attention never left the dog. He smells like them, she murmured. Grayson stepped closer. Your daughters? Her breath caught. Yes, they're safe, he said. They're here in Pine Hollow. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to make sense of it. No, they were adopted. They're gone. They were taken, Grayson said softly, by Clint Maddox. He's in custody now. They've been asking about you. For a long moment, Marina said nothing. Then her shoulders trembled and she pressed her hands to her mouth. They're alive, she whispered into her palms. Oh God. They're alive. They stayed with her for nearly an hour, letting the conversation ebb and flow. Sometimes questions were asked, sometimes silence stretched between them, and sometimes stories about the girls before everything fell apart were shared. Marina spoke of Saturday morning muffin baking, Laya's fascination with books that had maps in them, and June's habit of carrying pebbles in her pockets for luck. Occasionally, Hunter rested his head on her knee, and she absent-mindedly stroked his ears while talking. When she grew weary, Dr. Chowry intervened. We'll start her discharge paperwork today, he said. With support, she was more than ready to leave. The drive back to Pine Hollow was quiet. Marina rode in the back with Elena, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the road. Hunter sat up front with Grayson, occasionally glancing back at them. Do you think they'll recognize her right away? Elena asked softly. Grayson kept his eyes on the road. Some things go deeper than memory. They'll know. At the sheriff's station, the girls were still in the conference room, coloring books spread across the table, mugs of now-cold cocoa pushed aside. When Marina stepped inside, she froze at the threshold. Laya looked up first, narrowing her eyes as if sizing up the stranger. June followed, the pencil slipping from her fingers. Laya. June. Marina's voice trembled. Neither girl moved at first. Then Laya rose slowly, cautiously crossing the distance until she was an arm's length away. You're real, she said. Marina's breath caught. I've always been real, and I've never stopped loving you. June was the first to break, rushing forward and burying her face in Marina's sweater. Laya followed, arms wrapping tightly around both of them. Hunter remained behind, tail swaying gently, eyes on the doorway, as if guarding the moment from the world. They stayed like that for a long time, unhurried. Grayson leaned against the doorway, the weight in his chest finally lifting. The ordeal wasn't over. There were hearings, paperwork, and the possibility that Maddox had more tricks. But for now, the right people were together. And for now, that was enough. The Pine Hollow courthouse hadn't seen this much activity in years. By the time Deputy Grayson Cole pulled into the back lot, the front steps were already crowded with townspeople pretending to be casual passers-by. The crisp morning air glinted off frost still clinging to the grass, giving the town a hush as if it were holding its breath. Inside, conversations bounced off the marble floors. Reporters hovered near the clerk's desk, notebooks in hand. On the far side, Ruth Bellamy from the Children's Justice Fund reviewed her notes, her navy suit crisp and her expression composed. Grayson entered with Hunter, whose black and tan coat gleamed in the light. People stepped aside, part respect, part curiosity. Hunter's name had been front-page news 2 days ago. K-9 leads, deputy to missing sisters. Ruth looked up as they approached. Cole, she said, extending a hand. Glad you're here, and glad he's here. She bent to scratch Hunter behind the ears. We'll need both of you. Grayson's gaze shifted toward the courtroom doors. Maddox was in holding, his attorneys posturing, preparing to portray him as a misunderstood caretaker. They had to make the truth undeniable. By mid-morning, the pretrial hearing began. Maddox sat at the defense table in a suit that didn't fit well, hair slicked back, jaw tight. His eyes kept darting toward the gallery, trying to assert control. Ruth opened with a concise summary. The evidence would show that Clint Maddox had knowingly and unlawfully imprisoned 2 minors, hidden their whereabouts for years, and profited from fraudulent welfare and guardianship claims. This was not a custody dispute. It was deliberate exploitation. Maddox's attorney attempted to cast him as a victim of miscommunication between agencies, but Ruth countered each claim with documentation, photocopies of falsified forms, unexplained bank deposits, and the forged life insurance application in Marina Hale's name. During a break, Grayson stepped outside into the pale winter sunlight. Hunter stayed close, their shadows overlapping on the pavement. Elena joined them, paper coffee cup in hand. Ruth was tearing into him in there, a faint smile brushing her lips. But we're not finished. We need testimony that hits hard, not just on paper, but in the jury's gut. Do you want Marina Marine? Grayson asked. She's ready, Elena replied. Dr. Chowry cleared her to travel under supervision. She wants to speak. Grayson exhaled slowly. The defense will attack her mental health. Of course they will, Elena said. That's why we'll lead with it. She's stable, lucid, and she's the only person who can place Maddox exactly where he belongs. When court resumed, Marina stepped onto the stand. She wore a simple gray sweater, her hair pulled back, and a silver chain with tiny initials, L and J, resting at her collarbone. Her hands trembled briefly as she adjusted the microphone, but her voice was steady once she began speaking. She recounted the weeks leading up to her hospitalization, describing the symptoms she couldn't understand, and her fear of becoming a danger to her own children. She explained how she had trusted Maddox, someone she had considered a friend, to watch Leia and June while she sought treatment. Then she spoke about the letters. I wrote to them, she said, her eyes fixed on the jurors. Every week, on birthdays, holidays, even on sunny days after a long winter. I didn't get any replies, but I thought maybe they were too young to write back. I had no idea he was telling them I'd left for good. Her voice cracked on that last line. A few people in the gallery shifted, some clenching their jaws, others blinking rapidly. Next came the journal. Ruth handed it to Marina, who confirmed it was hers. The worn cover, sketches of the girls, and a letter tucked near the back. All were entered into evidence. Ruth didn't need to add any drama. The power lay in the pages themselves. Maddox didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the table, fingers clenched into fists. After lunch, Grayson took the stand. He described the day on Lincoln Court, the sounds from the cellar, and the girl's condition. They weren't hiding, he said. They were surviving. There's a difference. Ruth's final question was simple. Deputy Cole, if it weren't for Hunter, would we even be here today? Grayson glanced down at the dog lying calmly at his feet, then back at the jury. No, we wouldn't. By late afternoon, the evidence was stacked neatly before the judge. Ruth concluded her case with a quiet confidence that filled the room far more effectively than any dramatic speech could. Outside in the corridor behind the courtroom, Marina sat with Leia and June, sharing a bench under a tall window where sunlight poured in like warm water. Hunter lay across their feet, his head resting on Leia's sneakers. "They'll decide soon," Grayson said, stopping beside them. Marina nodded, her hand lightly resting on June's shoulder. "Whatever happens in there," she said softly, "they're not taking us apart again." The jury was out less than 5 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice rang clear. Guilty on all counts. The atmosphere shifted in the courtroom. Relief, tension, murmurs running through the room. Maddox remained stone-faced as the judge sentenced him to 32 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole. Outside, a small crowd had gathered on the courthouse steps. Some clapped as Marina and the girls emerged. Others offered quiet nods. In a town like Pine Hollow, justice wasn't just a legal term. It was personal. That night, Grayson drove out to Maple Lane, where Marina was settling into a modest white cottage on the town's edge. The kitchen light glowed, and through the window, he could see her at the table with the girls, laughter spilling freely for the first time in what must have felt like forever. Hunter stood at the yard's edge, tail wagging slowly. When Grayson opened the gate, the shepherd trotted inside as if he'd always belonged. "Staying tonight?" Grayson asked, half smiling. Hunter didn't answer, of course. He bounded up the porch steps and disappeared into the warm light. Grayson lingered by the gate, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the scene inside. For the first time in months, the weight on his shoulders eased. There was still work to do. Paperwork, follow-ups, ensuring Maddox's conviction held through any appeals. But for tonight, the right people were home. That was enough. Spring returned to Pine Hollow quietly. Snow melted slowly from the eaves, dripping one drop at a time. Maples along Main Street pushed out their first green buds, and the morning air carried the faint scent of wet earth instead of wood smoke. On Maple Lane, life had begun to settle into a calmer rhythm. Marina Hale's cottage, with peeling white paint and a porch swing that creaked in the breeze, had become more than a safe place. It was home. Inside, the kitchen smelled of cinnamon toast most mornings, and the sound of two girls laughing drifted all the way to the mailbox. Hunter had claimed the living room rug as his post, content and finally at peace. He still perked up whenever the front gate creaked or a car slowed on the road, but most of the time he slept with one ear tilted toward the hallway where the girls played. Leia and June took turns brushing him after school, and each evening he would make a slow circuit of the yard before settling in for the night, as if personally overseeing the household security. 2 weeks after the verdict, the town held its annual spring festival. A celebration skipped the previous year due to flooding. This year, booths lined the square, selling paint, quilts, and handcrafted wooden toys. The sweet smell of kettle corn mingled with the lively tunes of a bluegrass band playing under the gazebo. Grayson walked through the festival holding a coffee in one hand and Hunter's leash in the other. People stopped them every few steps, patting Grayson on the shoulder, crouching to scratch Hunter behind the ears, and praising him like it was headline news. Hunter accepted the attention with the same calm dignity he'd shown in the field, wagging his tail just enough to show his appreciation. At the center of the square, a new bronze statue gleamed atop a stone pedestal. It had been unveiled that very morning. A life-size German shepherd, caught mid-stride, ears alert, nose pointed forward. The plaque read, "Hunter, the dog who heard what others ignored." Grayson paused with Hunter in front of it, and soon Leia and June came running. Marina following at a slower pace. Each girl carried a small bouquet of wildflowers they had picked from the festival's edge. "These are for him," June said, pointing to the statue. Hunter sniffed the flowers when they were lowered to his level, then sat back, staring up at the bronze version of himself with what almost looked like curiosity. Laya knelt beside him and whispered something only he could hear. His tail thumped once against the cobblestones in response. Later that afternoon, Grayson found himself at Marina's booth. She and the girls had baked pies, apple, blackberry, and one peach that had already sold out. The table was covered with a gingham cloth, and a handwritten sign read, "Hail Family Pies, baked with love." "You're branching out," Grayson said, dropping a few bills into the donation jar. "Therapy," Marina replied with a small smile. "And a way to start over without feeling like I owe the world an explanation." Behind her, the girls were busy arranging pie boxes and sneaking each other crumbs. Hunter lay at their feet, eyes half-lidded but still alert to anyone who came near. "You've got good security," Grayson remarked. Marina softened her gaze as she looked down at him. "He saved more than just them," she said quietly. "He gave me something I could trust again." That night, after the festival ended and the square grew quiet, Grayson drove back to the cottage. On the passenger seat rested Hunter's K9 vest, freshly cleaned and folded, the badge still clipped to the strap. On the porch, the girls were curled up under a blanket with Hunter nestled between them, while Marina's soft voice drifted from inside. Grayson stepped up, holding the vest. "I think it's time," he said. Laya frowned. "Time for what?" "For him to retire," Grayson said gently. "He's done his duty. Now he gets to just be yours." June's eyes widened. "Forever," Grayson nodded. "Forever." He knelt and slipped the vest over Hunter's head one last time, fastening the strap, then unclipped the badge and placed it in Laya's hand. "This belongs here, now," he said. Hunter stood patiently through the whole process, then shook, letting the vest slide into Grayson's hands. He licked Laya's knuckles and flopped back down between them with a sigh, as if officially approving the arrangement. The weeks that followed settled into a quiet peace. Marina began volunteering at the community center, teaching a weekend baking class. The girls returned to school, their lives expanding beyond the walls that had once contained them. And Hunter, true to his nature, never strayed far from their side. Grayson continued visiting them regularly. Sometimes it was for official check-ins, more often just because he wanted to. He would drop by after a shift, coffee in hand, to find the girls playing in the backyard while Hunter patrolled the fence line. Other times, he would catch them walking down Main Street together, a picture of the life they had worked so hard to reclaim. One evening in late May, as the sun set behind the ridge, painting the clouds gold, Marina invited him to stay for dinner. They ate on the porch, plates balanced on their laps, while Hunter stretched out at their feet. Fireflies began to blink in the tall grass beyond the fence. "Feels different now," Marina said softly, watching the girls chase each other across the yard. Grayson nodded. "It should." "I don't just mean for us," she added. "The town notices too. People stop me in the store. They say they're glad to see us. That doesn't happen everywhere." "That's Pine Hollow," Grayson said. "Small towns remember who they stand behind." Hunter lifted his head at the sound of his name, though it hadn't been spoken. His gaze swept from the girls to the yard to the fading light, then back again, as if checking every corner of his world before letting it settle for the night. As darkness fell and the porch light flicked on, Laya and June came running, breathless and dropped down beside him. June leaned into his shoulder, and Laya rested her head against his neck. "You could have gone back to chasing bad guys," Laya whispered, "but you picked us." Hunter didn't move or make a sound, but his eyes softened. And in that quiet, unmistakable way dogs do, he told her she was right. Sometimes miracles don't announce themselves with flashing lights or breaking news. Sometimes they show up on four paws, with unwavering eyes and a heart that never quits. For Pine Hollow, Hunter was more than a hero. He was proof that even in the shadowiest places, someone is still paying attention to the quiet signals that everyone else misses.